How do we release the conditioning of the old epoch? How do we embrace the liminal transition into the unknown? And how do we facilitate the discovery, the ripening, the liberation of a new epoch? These are the three processes we're trying to make space for. And the inquiry that I'm inviting us to reflect on, the way we approached the idea of the meta-crisis, which is a fancy name to describe the fact that there are several potentially civilizational endangering processes that are underway, each of which unto itself appears to be intractable and difficult to approach. And the whole thing together converging at this time, what the two ideas or two themes or two mindsets that we brought into it last Saturday. One was, right, let's recognize that what we describe as the meta-crisis is actually a byproduct or a symptom of an epoch, an operating system that has developed but reached its obsolescence point, and a new epoch, a new operating system that is not yet in place. And in the transition, much seems to be breaking down. We are not claiming to know how, we're not claiming to have the answers, but the invitation we make in this inquiry here today is we're asking, what's the way to embrace this life? Right here, right now, as a developmental, soul and spirit-centered opportunity. One in which we can reclaim the sacred, not just when we are in an altered state, not just when we are in any way you want to finish the sentence, but including the struggle, including the pain, including, as Michelle said a few minutes ago, including when I criticize myself, not even being critical of the fact that there is a part of me that's critical. Can we find a way to embrace the totality of who we are as humans and recognize that perhaps there is a way to imagine and envision this crisis point as a birthing crucible. And actually, that if there is a test in it, the test in it is to live fully in the here and now, in the every moment of what it is that we encounter, whether it's a struggling moment at work, whether it's a struggling moment at home, in our relationships, whether it is when we are in the meditation and the deepest prayer we choose to formulate.
Thank you so much. Always great to begin our day with music from Holland. Hi, Aviv. Great idea for this. It was Aviv's idea to do a spontaneous pop-up today, and we all said, yes, let's do it. This day today will stand on its own merit, but it does follow from last Saturday, which was really a special gathering. And it's wonderful that we can come together around two subjects that work interactively if you could say the soul, and then to understand what's going on between the epochs so we can better ready ourselves for the future. As Aviv said today in the warm-up call, this is going to fly by. So these are just little bits, little seeds that we're planting for thought as our journey continues. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Aviv.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And my audio is still coming through clear?
Yes, very good.
Is today also a Valentine Day or something?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I don't know what better way to spend Valentine with a group of friends, reflecting on the transition from one epoch to the next. And thank you all for coming and for embarking on this adventure.
Can I just say one more thing that I forgot, Aviv? Please, we ask, please kindly leave your cameras on. This is an intimate, interactive process, and we really like to see your faces as you like to see ours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. So the way today is going to work is I'm going to make a brief opening to put this dual inquiry, the shift from one epoch to a new epoch, and the soul's journey, to put these two inquiries inside an even bigger picture, which is the broader portals inquiry. And then we're going to bring the focus to the soul's journey from an epoch that's fading to an epoch that's emerging, and bring to focus the three processes that are involved, and suggest that wherever you are in the world, you are experiencing these three processes. Most people perhaps unconsciously, but we are all experiencing that something is ending, something is fading, something is dying, and something else, perhaps not everybody can feel that, but something else is actually emerging, is incoming, is birthing with us and through us. So, and then we will bring through the development of that, the intuition, your voices, your intelligence, because part of the idea of today is to metabolize, to process these inquiries in the whole person sense, not just as concept, not just as head ideas, but to actually listen deeply inside and facilitate and listen to the intelligence that's appearing through the gathering of humans that we are. The last part, we will engage in a practice, a from to practice, and explore a sense of options. And when we get to do that, the sense of it is not that we are offering what is the one way or the right way, or a way to solve a problem or to answer a question. It's more the idea of exploring a growing range of options. If you like, right there is a from to example of a polarity, from looking for solutions to problems or looking for answers to questions, to exploring options, expanding the range of possibilities. It's a rewiring of a mindset. So we will be exploring these kinds of pivots. So to begin, what is the larger context inside of which today's inquiry, last Saturday, and today's inquiry about the soul's journey in between epochs, where will we place it? Well, we have had on the top of the homepage of portals of perception, the inquiry, where does the future come from, right from the beginning, some 4 years ago. And we never explained that very much, so I'm about to explain it now, or put it at least in context. Because in most situations, when you say to somebody the word future, what they conjure up is a linear timeline. You say, well, yesterday was the past, today is the present, tomorrow is the future. But we don't mean when we say where does the future come from, we don't mean it in the limitation of a linear timeline. Yes, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, they are potentially part of a future, or sometime, a lot of the time actually, they are replaying the past. So what do we mean actually when we say, when we invite this idea of where does the future come from? Well, we are actually asking, where does possibility come from? We are inquiring, where does elevation come from? We are essentially inviting, under the larger umbrella, larger idea of the future, the sense of possibility, the sense of the latent potential that is there with all of us, and the sense of the greater universal potential that is coming online at this time, as I will describe in a minute when we talk about the transition of the epoch. So the inquiry about where does the future come from is truly an invitation for possibility, for latent potential, for intelligence, for higher and larger perspective and perception, for what some would like to describe as a higher state of consciousness. All of those different ideas in different names, they all represent a potential that is latent for humanity. So in that sense, the answer to the question, where does the future come from, is, well, it comes through all of us, each and every one of us, potentially. When you found a way to forgive deeply inside you a person or a certain situation, you have released that situation into a new future rather than being stuck in a historic point of pain. When you come up with a new way of seeing the challenges you are facing, you are literally opening for yourself and likely for the people around you a future that was not available before. So we are each, simply by the definition of being a human at this time on earth, we are each an active agency for the future. And in that sense, it is also true to say that the soul has a latent memory of the future. I know that sounds a little strange, that you'd say, how can one have a memory of the future? But the soul has the vast range of potential, and the latency of that, including what is future in the sense of timeline, in which that is already latent in the soul, is a memory. And that's where we transcend in this idea of the future, the linearity of time. So it's a bit of a boggling concept to assimilate, but something to perhaps allow in, because for the brain, if you haven't considered before that in an entangled universe, the linearity of time is not a limitation, it may sound strange, but the soul has no concern whatsoever in terms of traveling up and down the timeline. So, so then inside this inquiry, within the portal's journey, we have been tracking several core lines of inquiry. One is, for example, the inquiry of healing. What is healing and how does healing happen? And another, which is the main focus of today, is tracking the journey of the epoch. And that begins when we say journey of the epoch. So what do we mean by that? Well, when we said where does the future come from, it brought to focus a deep inquiry into what is occurring right now with humanity on planet Earth, wherever you observe and get yourself involved. So there is a deep study and a deep introspection inside us and around us as to why or what is happening right now and why does it feel in many places all over the world that, well, the things in the way we have known them in the past are falling apart. The operating system of modernity in the way it has evolved over a couple of centuries seems to be imploding. And it has many manifestations in different places. Why is that the case? And when we go deeper into that conundrum, it brought us time and again to inquire what has happened over the last 60 or 70 years. This phase, for many of us, the time we've been alive and been monitoring world affairs and our own journeys within that context. And why is there such a sense of an extraordinary acceleration, extraordinary intensification? And in the study of the epoch, the study and the inquiry about the 60-year trace really come inside an even bigger timeline, which stretches back to first the Industrial Revolution, so the last 200 and 250 years. What has happened in humanity in this time? How, when we shifted in our mindset and in our capacity from the sense of being shaped by the forces of nature to developing the idea that we can shape nature, industrialize nature, excavate and utilize natural resources and burn them very quickly, how that sense of separation from the more ancient time in the way we dealt with nature in the past, how that shaped and how that catalyzed separation and arrogance and created many of the problems we are dealing with today. And when you trace into that, it actually takes you to the even further back in time reflection of, well, what was it that emerged from the Renaissance to the Enlightenment, and how the rise of the scientific method and the search for objective knowledge, how that unleashed the Industrial Revolution and some of what we are experiencing today. And you can even trace backward to maybe 2,500 years through to the axial transition. So we're really tracking all these transitions when we are describing the sense of an epoch that's culminating now. And we started to talk about the epoch culminating before AI became the big story of the last couple of years, with the upside of possibilities, but also with the significant concerns about what we describe as the below the line detrimental potential of unlocking these technologies. So the more we dive into this trace of an epoch, 3,000 or 3,500 years from the collapse of the Bronze Age and the ancient Egyptian King Scorpion dynasty that unified the Upper and Lower Egypt, as perhaps a way of describing an inception of this 3,500-year run. And we are describing that this epoch is fading, is dying, and a new epoch is onsetting and birthing through us, and that the next couple of decades is a major intensifying and deciding transition, ultimately to unfold over the next 2 or 3 centuries. That entire story the more we went deep inside it, the deeper it also brought the reflection about the multiple challenges we are now facing, humanity is now facing. And the realization was, and I never planned it and never thought I would be doing it, but where that journey guided us, again, not as a decision, but almost being led through the unconscious, it guided us to begin to develop the portals into the soul work. And one of the main reasons was the realization that we cannot hope to solve the challenges that humanity is now facing just by having smart brains and sophisticated technology. That's essentially been the modus operandi of the last several decades. We create a problem, we use some of the smartest brains on the planet. Often they sit in Silicon Valley, but not only there, and they come up with a technological solution. And the arrogance of that is similar to what I described in one of the recent portals into the soul chapter. In the 20th century, we had a moment when we thought we were going to solve all our problems because the DNA was discovered. And after the DNA was discovered, the Genome Project was launched. And there was a moment in time when the collective thought, the zeitgeist was, we are going to eliminate disease because the Genome Project will reveal everything and sophisticated modern medicine will solve all the problems, only to discover, right, we solved some of the diseases, but we've actually been seeing in humanity over the last 2 decades the rise of all sorts of new conditions, all range of autoimmune disorders, many of which can actually be, when looked at through the lens of the soul, represent a struggle to adapt to a new epoch. We are migrating en masse, humanity, from an old epoch to a new epoch, and we are struggling with this transition, which is the focus of our conversation today. And one of the byproducts is autoimmunity. So this is not me advertising this as a medical professional. This is a deep introspective inquiry that we can each engage with the soul to facilitate and ease what is it that we are struggling with at this time. Why do we find that struggle? And it is inside that we brought the merging of the inquiry about the transition from one epoch to the next and to the epoch that's emerging now, and the soul easing inside that journey. And specifically, the focus today is this inquiry of, well, so how do you differentiate 3 different processes? How do you notice in yourself, how do you regulate in yourself the experience, the actuality, that there is a process that's ending, there is an epoch that's fading, there is an epoch that's dying. That practically means that something in us is dying. Mind you, there is something that's dying in us all the time, because that's part of the cellular process. There are cells dying in our body all the time, and there are cells that regenerate and bring us to recreate and regenerate the biological constitution that we are. So in a way, at a certain biological level, it's not different, it's not foreign to us to be a vessel that's both dying and rebirthing all at the same time. That is already the experience of life. However, it's a different story when we are inquiring to appreciate that not at the automated biological level, but at the space above the neck where we have awareness and perception and consciousness and a capacity to choose, where the strange conundrum is we discover time and again that in many ways the evolutionary story that perfected the biological part of ourselves, life one if you like, in many ways revealing to us that it is more versatile with greater capacity already integrated than the part of us that is still young. There is a part of us that is still so young. It's just birthing into its discovery of the next evolution of what being human means. And in that sense, we are really like toddlers. So one of the things I do when I look to differentiate in myself these three processes, one is the process of something that's dying, the other is the process of something that's being born and emerging, and then the liminal space in between. And one of the ways I am sensing into this inquiry and the central inquiry that we attended to last Saturday and today, which is so how can we tenderly, caringly hospice the old epoch and tenderly and caringly midwife the rise of a new life within us, of a new epoch. How do we do that? And one of the things that I choose to do to sense into this is I look to see where do I see around me people who are perhaps towards the later stages of their life. I don't consider myself to be in the late stage of my life, even though some will say that I am. We all are approaching the finality, but I'm specifically looking to see where can I see the examples of those who are approaching this with grace. Actually, where can I find graceful navigation through challenge? What is it that's so compelling and attractive about people that we observe and we see that there is something about their way that they're able to gracefully manage difficulties? There's something very attractive, very compelling about it, and there is something very attractive and very compelling for me to observe my 18 months young grandson who exploring, playing, and when he falls, he cries for 10, 15 seconds, finds his mother or one of his grandparents, regulate himself, and he's smiling again, and he's up and running again. So I look at this and I say, well, can we be as adaptive, as resilient, as easy to regulate ourselves? So these are some of the dimensions of this inquiry. And the reason today's spontaneous event happened was when we announced in early January that we were going to do the February 8th event. I felt completely blank about it for a couple of weeks. I was in the liminal space of not knowing. It's a wonderful place to be. It's not comfortable to be there, but I found that if we don't allow ourselves to actually be inside the not knowing, then we don't make space for something new to find us. If we impose on every space that's being created already what we know, what we have done in the past, we prevent something new to find us. So for a couple of weeks I was in that liminal zone, and then on the run-up to last Saturday, a lot appeared, and we only got to about half of what whoever it was that appeared. And so the intuition was, let's come together again today for a spontaneous event. I've already recapitulated some of the elements that emerged last Saturday, and bring again the living exploration, where the invitation for you is, even as I speak, to, if you like to write, if you like to draw, if you like to move, if you like to engage in any way the whole person that you are. So with that, I'm not going to bring the slide. I'm going to frame again the question. Then I'm going to ask Rob to give us a little more music in the background. And I'm going to ask Rita and Beth to come on screen and give us a demonstration of how you can metabolize some of this content also by movement. Yeah, so the soul's journey in between epochs, part 2. And what we are describing is this sense that we are navigating this epochal shift, in which, as we said, there are 3 processes that we are endeavoring to facilitate. We are actually seeking to release the conditioning of the old epoch, the conditioning of the old operating system. How do we do that? How do we gently release? Because the old operating system, it has its own life, if you like. It has its own anchoring in us. It doesn't want to let go. It wants to resist, and we see the evidence of it everywhere we look around the world. So how do we release the conditioning of the old epoch? How do we embrace the liminal transition into the unknown? And how do we facilitate the discovery, the ripening, the liberation of a new epoch? These are the 3 processes we're trying to make space for. And the inquiry that I'm inviting us to reflect on. And actually, let me do one more thing before that. So if you were to right now put a number on between 1 to 10 on the Richter scale of how regulated you feel you are, how balanced you feel you are, how settled you feel you are in your body in this moment in time, where 10 is I feel very regulated, very centered, very balanced, and 1 is I feel still frazzled from the day, disjointed, and all over the place. So you give yourself a number. Where are you half an hour into this conversation? You may even note where you were 30 minutes ago when we started, and where are you now? And so take into your self-assessment, your self-calibration, that piece of information, and then give yourself a sense, another measure where you are at the end of our exploration, and then put right next to the number of the 1 to 10 on the being regulated and intact and well, put 1 on hope. So imagine that 10 out of 10 is, I'm very hopeful. I'm positively hopeful and optimistic about the future and about my future within the future. And 1 would be, I feel very anxious and uncertain about what comes next. And we have both feelings. So we don't want to suppress or deny those experiences, but just give yourself a 1 to 10 notation where you are, and please visit that sense at the end of our session. So, okay, so with that, Rob, let's bring your music in the background. What is it like to be in a liminal transition where 1 part of us dies while another is being born? I'm going to give us 2 minutes here with music. Then I'm going to add one more dimension to it, and then we're going to bring some of your voices and your intuition about this inquiry. Now, please. Well, let me bring one more dimension to this, which is part of how I'm experiencing the liminal transition. Then we'll bring some of your voices. What I'm experiencing is that we're getting an echo from Europe, so I'm going to have to mute. What I'm experiencing is that I need to attend to regulation work all the time. I need to, because of the intensification of one part of me dying and another part of me is being birthed. And I know these words can sound dramatic, and if you're more comfortable with a life in me is fading and a new life is emerging, perhaps it's easier for you to assimilate it with that language. One experience is that it needs us to attend to regulating our minds, regulating our emotions, regulating our nervous system, regulating how we manage relationship with other people. And that idea has been popularized and is attended to quite often. But what we want to do is make sure we add 2 more dimensions to it, which is to attune. What is it we attune to once we are regulated? And the invitation that we make here is to attune to the new epoch that's arriving, that's emerging through us and within us, and that it needs us to be its theater of service. So let's pick it up, please, Rob. And my invitation to Rita and Beth, what would you do by way of engaging the human system to guide regulating, attuning, and serving this process in whatever way you choose? Please, Rob, lead us with some music. Thank you very much. Well, friends, so it's a moment to bring perhaps a couple, three voices at this stage, and then we will develop to additional variations of the same inquiry. And yeah, what would you offer by way of intuition, by way of the intelligence that's appearing through you? Please, Michelle.
Hi, thank you. So I did direct message you, Aviv, which my answer in, to be concise, is I'm frustrated when the old habits keep emerging and unwilling to die. And I'm excited when the new expanded consciousness emerges. And during this time, my words are to myself, it's okay, sweetheart. I know you'll keep practicing. You'll never give up. So that's the grace, that's the comfort that I offer me as I transition.
What is it you experience inside when you offer that message from you to you?
From the awfulness of the critic that I remember all too well, which still pops up, to total with no judgment, not controlling, total acceptance, love. I mean, we're on that topic today. So my way of reminding me of my love is calling myself sweetheart. So, yeah. And I can just say my practice, studying with Craig Hamilton, don't know if you know of him. But yes, how can I stay awake? How can I be awakened, throughout my life, and practicing during meditation to be more radical, because I'm not responsible and I'm in no danger. And I think using neuroplasticity, right, the practice to change my brain so that when I live throughout life, I'm more likely to not have the judgment, not need the control, have greater acceptance. Am I making any sense?
100%. Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle. Please, Beth.
I had a couple of things coming in, and I'm going to do some of it through movement because that's how it comes through me. One is, as for some reason I'm feeling grief today, and had a realization that not only do we release things from the past by consolidating something of significance while letting go all the trying, the leftovers, whatever it is that goes with that. But as we release the past, so do we release the future in. They happen at the same time. So I was playing with that because in this not knowing time, the exploration of playing is a gentle way of coming into something without hammering myself. What I realized, and I think this might be one that we'll take to the I have for expansion, is that most of what we do these days is we push to get through things. I've got to get through. I've got to not grief. I've got to, whatever that is, get my job done. I've got to be present. I've got to. But then we also bring pressure to the new because the release of new things also has a different tension in it. Kids have a way different tension in their body than middle-aged or older people. And so this tension, when I do that just with my hands, it doesn't allow it to move through. So if I back up a little bit and find a place where there's kind of an ease, a softness, and an availability, then it lets me shift. And I can either shift into a place of just receiving something or getting something new in my internal intelligence, or just in that place of waiting and listening and playing with what's needed here. Do I need to go small? Do I need to go large? Do I need to listen with my ears or with my body or my emotion or my mentality? What needs to listen?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was playing with today.
Thank you, Beth. Can I try something with you live?
Certainly.
So can you start leading all of us, anybody who wants to join in, either sitting or standing, with simple inhale and exhale, and whatever movement you will do to accompany that sense of, because I want to show you something. We're going to turn the linearity of time between the epochs through the inhale and the exhale. So what would you do, please, by way of exhaling and inhaling? And do you inhale when you pull in or the other way around?
Well, I play with it to see which one is facilitated.
So let's inhale actually when you pull in your hands. Okay, now keep on doing what you're doing. I'm gonna give you a voiceover now so you can integrate another imagery inside it. What if you were to imagine that as you inhale, you are inhaling a new future that's arriving, a new possibility, a new epoch that's birthing through you. And then when you exhale, you actually let go, you release whatever old you no longer need. Do it one more time. You inhale, you can think that with your breath you are bringing in to your system the everything that's arriving now to assist human life, which we are describing as a new epoch. And I'm releasing, and I let go what I no longer need. When I do this, I'm realizing that it's actually the other way around. It's not that first the old epoch is dying and then the new epoch is birthing. No, there is a new epoch that's arriving, new permission, new possibility that's arriving for human life, and it helps us release what we no longer need. So you can look at it from the two sides, releasing yourself from a past to the future construct. Just one more time. And I let go. And then when I completely let go, there is a moment before I take in the air again, which is analogous to that liminal space. Can I pause there for a moment? And now bring in the air again. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Please, Kiriki.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Aviv, for this and Beth for this great exercise. Just really helped me kind of embody and ground myself. And thank you to Michelle for also speaking about the importance of neutrality and love in embracing new good things. And I'm just thinking of there are things that are coming towards us, and some of them are really inspiring and special, and some of them might not be so good in a way, and they cause fear. And that's for also the idea of pushing and pulling that Beth introduced was also very effective. And then there are things from the past that are in a way outdated, and they are degenerative, but there are also special things that come from times of old. So maybe a question that arises is how to embrace the perennial things that are both in the past and the future, which relates with what you said in the beginning, that we are approaching this not from a linear sense, but more from a sense of remembering the future, which was an interesting conundrum. So I would say, for me, when there is a feeling of fear towards degenerative and things that are either arising as new or they come from times of old, it's how can I find those things that stand beyond time in a way. That's what's coming in at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Kiriki. So the invitation to harvest what's perennially true and in many ways offer a bridging from the old to what is emerging anew. Let's bring Avshalom, please.
Hello. I have two smart-ass ideas. The first is an updating of an old idea. It's to do with something that I can say to the past and to the future. This town ain't big enough for the both of you.
Okay.
So somebody has to give up, and I know what's the choice. And the other is looking at the word let go. It has the word Lego in it. So it's a unique Lego where you can discard the parts that doesn't seem to belong, and somehow, in a miraculous way, new parts appear that together make a totally different picture.
Thank you. Wonderful. So what is it we are beginning to discover as voice after voice is coming? We're seeing, we're hearing the narrative and the wisdom that we are each cultivating inside our own inner dialogue. That's the inner dialogue with self. That's the inner dialogue with the soul. And what I am harvesting already is how important it is that we have a conversation with ourselves every morning, every day, every evening about the experience of being a human at this time, and that we fortify, we encourage ourselves, and when we need, as Avshalom, as you say, offer some direct instructions as to what you're going to make space for and what not. So one can be gentle and one can be firm, one can be resolute and one can be resilient in your inner dialogue. Please, Ursula.
Yes, I'd like to come at this from a little experience that I had a few days ago. And I was sitting on a beach at a beach cafe, literally on the beach, wooden chairs, wooden tables, a little, about 10 people on the beach, a few children. And suddenly a mother turned up at this empty table beside me with 3 boys. And they put their things on the table to claim the table, and they rushed off to the ice cream section. And they chose their ice creams, and there's a lot of chatter. Then they came and sat down. And the mother went to get her coffee. And as they sat down and unwrapped their ice cream and cakes, suddenly the whole place went quiet. Everything was so still. And I was watching from the corner of my eye originally, but then I thought, I must witness this. And it was like watching these 3 little boys in the most delicate way eating their ice cream and their cake as though it was the first time. And it was like the atmosphere between them felt like the most reverential feeling that you can imagine. The stillness, the quietness, and their total attention with, I suppose it felt to me like an expression of love through satisfaction. It's just such a beautiful moment. And what it made me realize was that when I get up in the mornings and I think I want to connect to my higher self, because I can't start from where I am, so I need the guidance of something higher than my present self. And I sit and I thought it gave so much more significance to the stillness and the quiet of just waiting, literally waiting to see what may come through to me. It might be a word, it might be a picture. Usually it's above the maintenance level of my life, and something gets sparked in me to consider, to dwell with. And the atmosphere in me changes, the softening process happens. Or the direction is to try and do this next time and make this better. So that's how I'm finding what it's like to be in a liminal transition.
Thank you very much. So, Martin, I'm going to come back to you in the next round. I want to evolve the inquiry, because what we also started reflecting on Saturday, and I will now approach slightly different, is this idea of the meta crisis. So we have a context for it. This is obviously an AI imitation of the United Nations trying to deal with the global chaos and not doing a very good job at it. But the way we approached the idea of the meta crisis, which is a fancy name to describe the fact that there are several potentially civilizational endangering processes that are underway, each of which unto itself appears to be intractable and difficult to approach. And the whole thing together converging at this time, what the two ideas or two themes or two mindsets that we brought into it last Saturday. One was, right, let's recognize that what we describe as the meta crisis is actually a byproduct or a symptom of an epoch, an operating system that has developed but reached its obsolescence point, and a new epoch, a new operating system that is not yet in place. And in the transition, much seems to be breaking down. That was that one assisting awareness, because that when you integrate that into your thought process, it won't necessarily solve all that you're looking at, but you can have a different centering perspective from which to look at whatever it is you're grappling with. And then the second dimension we brought into it was that whatever you look at in the world has an interior dimension. We can describe that there is leadership crisis in the world, and we will observe that self-leadership, interior leadership, is the beginning of development and personal evolution. We will observe that there is an energy crisis in the world, and we will see that there is an interior crisis in the human energy condition. We see that there is an ecological, environmental issue, and we see that there is global warming within the human. All of which presents itself as a variety of concerns to the soul. So what I want today to bring into it and then evolve the inquiry that we started with is I want us to take a moment to broadly reflect on the last 20, 30, 40 years and what we've seen in how humanity tends to respond to the meta crisis, and bring that into our reflection. One response has been activist advocacy, mostly If you talk to activists who were involved in the last few decades, they feel that they failed. But against what? Against what? Perhaps they've done their job, perhaps they've performed and fulfilled their purpose in catalyzing awareness to whatever cause, the many causes that people felt they needed to bring activism to. But many of them have in many ways found themselves at a point of crisis because they haven't been able to create the change that they hope to cause. So that's been one response. Then you have people who went into policy making. They sought to get into an elected office or position of influence to help in some way shape, either in a local or regional or even in a global way, important decisions, only to discover that the system is so intractably locked that it's very difficult to influence much. So then you have people who do the scanning of what's happening on the planet, and they maybe have tried activism, maybe tried to get into influencing positions, but they have found themselves now at a point of the anxiety of doomsday and the depression of it, largely feeling that this planet is heading to a point of self-destruction, that humanity is self-destructing in the decades to come, and that it is intractable in a way that cannot be solved. You have some that has been their response to the difficult condition on the planet. Some even have taken to the nihilistic short-term gratification, feeling that, well, because nothing much can be done, I'm going to extract as much personal benefit and joy as I can, do it as selfishly as I can, and there's nothing else that can be done, so I might as well make the most of the little time left. Some are in that space of response. We have seen in recent years, and we will likely see more, people who return to traditional faith. In the East, people who re-enroll in various practices because they just find that nothing in the current modern, postmodern theater of life affords them the sense of redemption, the sense of meaning, the sense of that alleviates their anxiety. So both in the East and in the West, we see return to traditional streams in Christianity. So some find that is their only salvation, re-engaging an older belief system and finding their peace and redemption there. Very few, small group of mostly billionaires in Silicon Valley and a few other places playing their end of days scenarios by believing that humanity is going to destruct, and therefore they have a narrow window to create technological, material, silicon-based continuance to life. My perspective is some of the technologies developed can assist humanity, but the silicon-based consciousness that imagines the continuation of the species, the human species, without a biological human design, one that excludes the soul, is a very dangerous fantasy, and is leading humanity to a false premise. That's my perspective. But I'm here more reporting what I'm seeing in terms of the different responses to this point of crisis. Some find legitimate solution in what you could describe as back to the land and the body, feeling that the technological, conceptual age has separated us from the sources of nourishment, and we've got to come back to the land, we've got to come back to the body. So they engage in a variety of practices that land us back in the body, often supported by various Eastern practices. And some of that, and right next to it, there are those who approach spirituality as a bypassing technology. Essentially, whether declaring it or not declaring it, saying this is all too much for me. There's too much pain, there's too much suffering, there's too much struggle, too much noise in the digital world. I want to find access in the fastest way possible to altered states, to elevated states, to higher states of consciousness. And I want to use these, they won't say it, but they are following the path of what you can describe as dissociative bypassing. This is a trap that awaits right next to anybody that is pursuing any spiritual approach, because often spiritual approach can turn to be a bypassing. What I'm wanting to offer is that we are not claiming to know how, we're not claiming to have the answers, but the invitation we make in this inquiry here today is we're asking, what's the way to embrace this life, right here, right now, as a developmental, soul and spirit-centered opportunity, one in which we can reclaim the sacred, not just when we are in an altered state, not just when we are in any way you want to finish the sentence, but including the struggle, including the pain, including, as Michelle said a few minutes ago, including when I criticize myself, not even being critical of the fact that there is a part of me that's critical. Can we find a way to embrace the totality of who we are as humans and recognize that perhaps there is a way to imagine and envision this crisis point as a birthing crucible. And actually, that if there is a test in it, the test in it is to live fully in the here and now, in the every moment of what it is that we encounter, whether it's a struggling moment at work, whether it's a struggling moment at home, in our relationships, whether it is when we are in the meditation and the deepest prayer we choose to formulate. And refuse almost defiantly to bypass this moment, to bypass this life, to bypass it, to think that somewhere else there will be a solution, other than living in this moment as we humans can live at the fullest that we can. So that's where I'd like us to now evolve the question we started with. I'm going to ask again Rob to give us a little bit of music and then bring your voices. And what I'm asking of us now, what I'm inviting by way of collective intelligence, because we are each a part of a larger whole, we are each a theater for the epoch to reveal itself, to reveal its intelligence. The current of the change that's underway is emerging inside each one of us. And we're asking, what is it like to embrace living here and now as an opportunity to reclaim the sacredness of being alive, the sacredness of being a human in a liminal transition where one part of us dies while another is being born. Now please, Rob. Well, while we wait for other hands, Rita, can I put you on the spot and ask you, as you're trying to move with this, where were you going in your search? How were you metabolizing this? Because part of the invitation is, yes, we can metabolize it in more than one way. We can look to integrate these kind of contemplations by movement. Where did you find yourself with this?
It wasn't turning up as a physical movement as such, even though I'm sure it could be translated to that. But it came as a contemplation that if you look, if you ask yourself or someone else, where is the universe? It's not out there. It's everywhere. It's also here. And I could try to see if I can improvise a movement as I unpack the mental process. So where is the universe? It is here. It is there. It is everywhere in between. And I found myself asking myself, living moment by moment in the universe, what am I contributing any given moment? And it's not something that I have consciously practiced. I haven't got a track record as such with this question, but as you were formulating the question, Aviv, it just turned up to me. That would be a very interesting practice to explore, which I want to take up for a time just to test drive it several times a day. Maybe just take a few moments to pause, ask myself, what am I contributing at this moment? So that really is the concise version of it.
Thank you. Okay, friends, my intuition is that before we get to Martin's hand, we're going to do a quick round in rooms for 12 minutes in groups of threes, because I feel that it'll be useful to bring more voices into the conversation, and that way you can relax into it. So the invitation in rooms, while Lisa is getting that ready, how are you relaxing into the liminality of not knowing in a new time? How are we relaxing to discovering in the unknown? That would be the the invitation to spend 12 minutes in exploring this with each other. When we come back, we will move to spend the rest of the time to do some of the from to pivots that we described. So how about that? Are you all right with diving into a room with a person you've never met before and encouraging each other to describe how do we relax into being in a liminal space? Please, so let's do that and see you in 12. Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.